All right, well, let's hear from Themba Maseko himself, the former government spokesperson, about what Mr. Manyi had to say there. Themba, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for your time this morning. Well, I suppose he's cast so much doubt. He absolutely doesn't believe what you and the likes of Mcebisi Jonas had to say. Your thoughts on that? I mean, just your chance to respond to that.
Well, the good thing about this Zondo Commission is that it's giving everybody the opportunity to actually provide their side of the story. And importantly for me is that we're all speaking under oath. So it's one thing for somebody to express an opinion on something, but I always say to people that there's nothing that is as stubborn as facts. And what we're dealing with is facts. What Mcebisi Jonas and I said are facts. So I think that Jimmy is more than welcome to express his opinion, but the facts remain.
I just want to look at how he kind of tried to explain what you had to say and how it couldn't be anything that was untoward, saying that you said the president told you to please assist with the Guptas. Now, Mr. Manyi says people interact with ministers as they are the face of departments, of certain departments, and with the president, he says they go to them when they need something. They do not have an apparatus, and the only people they can point to them to are the director generals or directors general, who would then point them to processes that need to be followed. He says he didn't hear from you that the president disregarded the processes to be followed. So that is why he doubts what you had to say. Could he have a point there? Maybe that there's some blurring that the president didn't say to you, and you would know because you were there, disregard the process or inferred that you shouldn't worry and just do whatever it took.
Well, the sequence of events is very important to understand. Firstly, that there's a call from the president to say, help these people. And the call happens as I'm on my way to meet the Gupta family. I get to the Gupta family and then they, in a sense, give me an instruction to do certain things which I consider illegal. So Jimmy could have a point, I think, but the fact of the matter is that I was told to go and assist people who were then asking me to do something that was illegal, break the law, and simply transfer the whole communications budget to their own newspaper, which they were on the brink of launching, that he eventually ended up owning and buying. So, you know, the logic there is that, in fact, there's a link that one can make.
So are you saying if there's anybody not to be believed, it would be Mzwanele Manyi on the stand?
Well, he has said a lot of things at the commission yesterday. I think I'd rather leave it to the judge to decide.
So from what you're saying, everything that happened around the New Age sponsorships, around those breakfasts, around the money going that way was absolutely unethical.
It was absolutely unethical. No due process was followed, and he even made it very clear himself that his view was that the mainstream media were getting too much money. So his objective was to make sure that the Gupta newspaper actually gets a lion's share of the communication budget. He said it so himself, but I'd rather leave that for the commission to decide.
So, Themba, I mean, in your time there and your dealings and your communications with the former president, that's Jacob Zuma, around the Guptas, did you clearly get the feeling that he wanted them to get that preferential treatment, he wanted that special treatment? Was that the directive, undoubtedly?
I do not have any doubt about that. When somebody calls you and says, help these people, it's a very clear message. There cannot be any doubt about that. It's simply meant you must go and do what they're asking you to do. And the fact that the call came through as I was on my way to the meeting was no coincidence. I think it was part of a plan.
So you wouldn't have too much time to think about it. I don't know.
No doubt in my mind about it.
Okay, well, we're expecting to hear from Gwede Mantashe today. Now, we know that at some point, those who had information or those who wanted to offer information, written statements, lay formal complaints about state capture, possibly involving the Guptas, were asked to go to Gwede Mantashe, lay those complaints. It seems that you were the only one who, as far as we know, who actually was willing to officially lay a complaint with the ANC about Gupta's influence. I mean, just that how do you feel about that? I mean, there are so many people that you know, possibly.
I was very disappointed that, in fact, the process just collapsed because very few people were willing to come forward and speak. And I think it was a lost opportunity for the ANC, because if the ANC had made sure that that process was done properly, people had spoken, I think that Gwede Mantashe then, as Secretary General, would have been in a much stronger position to actually, even for his appearance today, to be able to go and say, this is what we know or what we knew then as the ANC, but they lost that opportunity. So he's going to the Commission today. He's going to provide a version. But the unfortunate thing is that I don't think at this stage the ANC knows the full story of what really happened, how many of the ministers actually participated in assisting the Guptas, who are those people. So the ANC is like in your position and we don't know. And I think that is going to be in a tough position. But I think it's important that he goes there. I don't see this being the final appearance of the ANC, because there's more stuff that's going to come.
Yeah.
And I think the ANC is going to be expected to actually go back and explain what really happened, or what they knew and what they could have done to stop what happened.
So you officially laid your complaint. Is it there in black and white?
I officially laid the complaint. Many people thought I was naive to go to the ANC, but I thought it was important because it was the ruling party. It was important for us to actually deal with this matter because its members, its leaders were actually being implicated in this state capture
What did you
project.
say in it?
Well, I told him the truth, what really happened, the calls,
the same
event, the calls, the meetings with the Guptas, how I subsequently ended up being fired from the government job because I refused to cooperate with
And what
the
was the
Guptas.
response from Gwede Mantashe at the time?
I never got a formal response. After I had 2 meetings with him, I then made my submission in writing. The next thing I saw was a media statement issued by the ANC to say nobody else came forward, I was the only one who came forward, and they've decided to stop the process. So
why do you think that nobody else came forward? You spoke about people being afraid. Afraid of whom? Afraid of Gwede Mantashe? Afraid of the former president? Afraid of whom?
Well, it was a very difficult period for the ANC. I think that the factions within the party were very deep at that stage. People knew that if they were able to come forward, chances were that they'll lose their ministerial positions, their government jobs. So there was a fear of losing their jobs. And largely because at the time, you also had President Zuma being in a very powerful position, both in the party and in government. So going to speak to Mantashe and telling him what was happening, it would have, in a sense, amounted to speaking truth about your own leader, your own president. Because normally, if there's a problem in the party or in government, the rightful person to go to would have been the president of the party and the ANC. But in this case, he was being implicated. So that's why people felt it would be difficult for them to go and snitch on their leader, so to speak.
Themba, you don't seem very convinced that we're going to get much or anything tangible out of Gwede Mantashe today. But do you feel, though, that there are things that he knew and he could have done at the time, being the Secretary General at the time?
I don't think I can say we're not going to get much from Gwede's presentation today. I think that he's going to give some information that will be useful for the Commission, but also for the country to also understand what really happened. I really think that they, as a party, weakened themselves by not allowing their own internal investigation to take place. Because I think that, as I said earlier, he would have been in a much stronger position if people had come to him and told him what was going on. And you would have actually been able to.
But do you think he didn't know? And do you not think maybe he was part of it all as well? Do you think he also had?
I think the fact of the matter is that we all knew a portion of the story. I don't think that there's anybody other than the actors themselves who knew everything that was going on as far as the state capture is concerned. But I think he knew something. Other people knew other things. But there isn't anybody who's sitting with comprehensive information of what happened, in which department, in which ministry, in which province. And I think that's why the Zondo Commission is very important, because it will give us this global sense of what really happened in all facets of government.
Do you think that Gwede Mantashe's hands are clean when it comes to state capture?
Look, I don't have the details about his own involvement, and I think that we should give the Commission the opportunity to investigate. I can't say at this stage whether his hands are clean or not.
You can't say or you won't say? Or you don't?
I don't know. Let me say I don't know the details. Yeah.
Well, this Commission of Inquiry, do you believe, you having been there, having watched it as well, and given your own evidence as well, that it will come to something? Because from the start, there's been the skeptics out there, including the media, including the public, say, oh, another commission, more money spent, what's it going to come to? This is just going to die down until the next thing. Do you think that we will get something out of this?
I have absolute confidence in this commission. I think that Judge Zondo, Deputy Justice Zondo, is actually committed to making sure that this commission succeeds. I think that maybe one of the things that could have been done differently was to actually have a panel of people, assessors who could assist him, because this is a lot of information that the commission is going to be receiving to decipher, to make sense out of. But I think that it's a very, very important step that we've taken as a nation. It's almost another version of a truth commission, because we just want to know what happened over the past 10 years that has actually set this country back for so many years. So I have absolute confidence that this commission is going to do a very good job. At the end of this commission, we will know what exactly happened, who did what, who was responsible. But most importantly, it will give the law enforcement agencies the opportunity then to start doing proper investigations so that people can be prosecuted.
And hopefully with the new NPA person at the hopefully the right person at the helm, Themba. I just want to, there might be some people who are watching, who have been watching the commission recently, who might say, yes, those like you and those who weren't afraid to come forward. You say some people knew, some people didn't know, some people were afraid. Those who knew and were willing to speak, why didn't we hear from you and them before this commission? Why didn't we hear this many, when it was happening?
You see, the fact of the matter is that a lot of people were thinking about their own security firstly, because...
Were you worried about your safety?
At some stage, still am a bit. I think it's an important issue. Secondly, people's livelihoods would have been at risk. I mean, if you are a minister and all you've done was being a politician and a minister, the risk of losing your job and being fired is actually quite high. If you're a director general, you've got responsibility, family, kids at school. So losing a job is something that is actually quite important, and that's why people didn't speak. Remember that a lot of those who were in government, if you were to speak and you get fired, part of the problem is that even business doesn't want to touch people who are seen to be in the bad books of the ruling party at any given point in time. So the risk of losing a government job meant you may not even get a job in the private sector. And people had to think about those kinds of issues quite seriously. We had lots of meetings with a lot of people, DGs, former DGs, etc., and the idea was that everybody was going to speak out. But at the end of the day, people had to think about their security, their family, their source of income. And that's why many people decided to hold back a little bit, because the country was actually not fully behind those of us who were willing to speak. If you're speaking, you're seen as enemy of the state. And that's why many people...
When you say the country, you mean what government, ANC supporters, Jacob Zuma supporters?
The public in general. I mean, if you are seen to be telling the truth and speaking and exposing certain things, chances were that, in fact, you were seen to be selling out.
Well, I wouldn't say, I don't know that it would be the entire country, but I get what you're saying, that there would have been a portion. I want to talk about your security very quickly, your safety. You say that you are still, you are very worried. You were worried at the time and you're worried now. What's happening?
Well, the risk is that...
have there been threats? Have you been threatened?
You get all kinds of things. You get all kinds of threats on social media. From time to time, you even get calls, the way people look at you walk in the street. But I must say, the overwhelming majority, the response that I've been getting has been very supportive, very positive. So I have absolute confidence that we're still a democratic state, we're still a constitutional state, and we will remain safe.
Okay, and you and your family are okay? Has it taken its toll on you, this entire process?
And we're okay.
Okay, well, good to hear. And thank you so much, Themba. Thanks for coming in and speaking frankly this morning.